December 17th, 1904, 1300 hours. Baugnez Crossroads, near Malmedy, Belgium. Private First Class Homer Ford crouches in a ditch beside the road, hands raised above his head, watching German tanks roll past his position. Ford is a radio operator with Battery B, 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, a reconnaissance unit that spots targets for American artillery. His convoy, 30 vehicles carrying 120 men, was heading south towards St. Vith when it encountered the lead elements of a German armored column. The encounter was sudden and one-sided. German Panther tanks appeared from a side road, blocking the convoy's path. German infantry appeared on both flanks, surrounding the American vehicles. The Americans had no anti-tank weapons, no armored vehicles, no way to fight. Their commander, Captain Roger Mills, made the only rational decision: surrender. White flags were raised, engines were shut off, weapons were laid on the ground, and 120 American soldiers stood with hands raised, waiting for German soldiers to take them prisoner. Standard procedure in such situations. Germans disarm prisoners, search them for intelligence materials, march them to the rear for processing, and eventually transfer them to POW camps. Ford has been told about POW camps. They're unpleasant but survivable. Bad food, hard labor, but governed by Geneva Convention rules. Most importantly, POWs aren't killed. Once you surrender, once you're disarmed, you're a prisoner, not a combatant. And international law protects you. That's what Ford believes as he stands with hands raised, watching German soldiers approach. He doesn't know that the German unit that captured him is Kampfgruppe Piper, an elite Waffen-SS battle group commanded by Obersturmbannführer Joachim Piper. He doesn't know that Piper's unit has already killed prisoners on 3 separate occasions during the past 24 hours. And he doesn't know that in approximately 15 minutes, he will witness the largest single massacre of American prisoners in the European theater of World War II. 84 men will die in a snow-covered field in 90 seconds. Private Homer Ford will survive. And his testimony, along with 42 other survivors, will document a war crime that will haunt the Waffen-SS forever. Kampfgruppe Piper. To understand what happened at Malmedy, we must understand who Joachim Piper was and what Kampfgruppe Piper represented. Joachim Piper was born January 30th, 1915, in Berlin, Germany. He joined the SS Verfügungstruppe, SSVT, predecessor to Waffen-SS, in 1934 at age 19. By 1938, he was serving as an adjutant to Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS and architect of the Holocaust. When war began in 1939, Piper transferred to combat units, serving with the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, LSSAH, Hitler's personal SS division. Piper fought in Poland, 1939, France, 1940, Balkans, 1941, Eastern Front, 1941-1943. He earned a reputation for aggressive tactics, personal bravery, bravery, and ruthlessness toward enemies. By 1943, Piper commanded SS Panzergrenadier Regiment 1 of the LSSAH. He was 28 years old and already a highly decorated officer. Knight's Cross, 1943. Oak Leaves to Knight's Cross, 1904. Numerous combat medals. But Piper also earned a darker reputation on the Eastern Front. His units were implicated in several atrocities against Soviet civilians and prisoners. Kharkov, February 1943. Piper's unit executed approximately 200 Soviet PUs and civilians. Italy, September 1943. During operations against Italian partisans, Piper's troops burned villages and executed civilians suspected of supporting partisans. Soviet military prosecutors documented these incidents but couldn't pursue war crimes charges because Piper was fighting on German-held territory. In December 1904, Piper was selected to command Kampfgruppe Piper, a battle group built around his regiment and reinforced with tanks, artillery, and engineers. Composition of Kampfgruppe Piper: 1st S Panzer Regiment, 72 tanks, Panthers, Panzer IVs, Tigers. 3rd S Panzergrenadier Battalion, 500 infantry. Artillery and anti-aircraft units. Engineers, total strength, approximately 4,000 soldiers. Mission: spearhead the German offensive in the Ardennes, advance 50 miles to the Meuse River, capture bridges, and open the route to Antwerp. Timeline: reach the Meuse in 48 hours. It was an ambitious, nearly impossible mission. Success required speed, aggression, and ruthlessness. Peiper briefed his officers on December 15th, the day before the offensive. "We are the spearhead. Speed is essential. We cannot stop for prisoners. We cannot stop for wounded. We cannot stop for anything. If American forces resist, destroy them. If they surrender, disarm them and leave them, but do not let them slow our advance." This briefing would later be cited as evidence that Peiper ordered his troops to ignore Geneva Convention protections for prisoners. Peiper denied giving such orders. He claimed he meant, "Don't waste time processing prisoners properly, just disarm them and move on." But his troops interpreted the briefing differently. And on December 17th, 1904, that interpretation would lead to murder. The surrender, December 17th, 1904, 12:45 hours. Balnez Crossroads. Battery B 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion is driving south from Chevannes-Houty towards St. Vith. The battalion's mission: establish observation posts to spot German movements and direct artillery fire. But the German offensive has disrupted American communications and command structures. Battery B doesn't know that German armored columns have already penetrated American lines and are advancing west along the same roads the Americans are using. At 12:45 hours, the lead vehicle in Battery B's convoy, a jeep driven by Corporal Michael Saranko, rounds a curve and encounters German tanks blocking the road ahead. Saranko slams on the brakes. Behind him, 29 more vehicles, trucks, jeeps, half-tracks, pile up on the narrow road. Before the Americans can react, German tanks open fire. The lead jeep explodes, hit by a 75mm tank round. Saranko and his passenger are killed instantly. The second vehicle, a truck carrying medical supplies, is hit next. 2 soldiers are killed, 4 wounded. Panic spreads through the convoy. Some soldiers try to reverse their vehicles, but the road is too narrow and vehicles are too close together. Some soldiers abandon vehicles and run into adjacent fields, but German machine guns cut them down. Some soldiers return fire with rifles, but rifle bullets don't damage tanks. Within 3 minutes, the situation is hopeless. Captain Roger Mills, Battery B commander, realizes his unit has 3 options: fight, suicidal, rifles against tanks; run, also suicidal, German machine guns will massacre anyone running across open fields; surrender, the only option that might save his men. Mills orders white flags raised. Soldiers wave white undershirts, handkerchiefs, anything that signals surrender. German firing stops. German infantry approaches the American vehicles, shouting, "Hände hoch! Raus! Schnell! Hands up! Get out! Fast!" The Americans comply. 120 men dismount from vehicles, hands raised, standing in groups along the road. German soldiers move through the Americans, confiscating weapons, watches, rings, cigarettes, food. Some German soldiers are professional, simply disarming prisoners and moving on. Others are aggressive, shoving prisoners, shouting insults, threatening with weapons. Private Ford stands with hands raised, watching German soldiers search his fellow Americans. A young SS soldier, perhaps 18 years old, approaches Ford and demands his watch. Ford hands it over. The SS soldier also takes Ford's cigarettes and lighter. Then the soldier moves on to the next American. So far, Ford thinks, this is going as expected. Unpleasant, but survivable. The prisoners are herded into a snow-covered field adjacent to the road, approximately 150 feet from the nearest vehicles. They're arranged in rough rows, standing close together for warmth. The temperature is 20 degrees. Snow is falling lightly. The Americans have no coats. Most were wearing only uniform jackets when captured. Some prisoners ask German guards if they can retrieve coats from their vehicles. The guards refuse. German tanks continue rolling past the crossroads. The advance can't stop for prisoners. Most German vehicles ignore the Americans completely. The tank crews are focused on reaching their objectives. But some tank commanders look at the prisoners. Private Warren Schmidt, standing near the front of the prisoner group, watches a German officer in a half-track vehicle stop and confer with the guards watching the prisoners. Schmidt can't hear the conversation, but he sees the officer gesture toward the prisoners, then drive away. 2 minutes later, German soldiers set up 2 machine guns, MG-42s, on tripods facing the prisoner group. The machine guns are approximately 100 feet from the prisoners. Private Ford sees the machine guns and feels his stomach tighten. "Why are they setting up machine guns?" Ford whispers to the man next to him. "Maybe to guard us," the man replies. But both men know that machine guns aren't needed to guard unarmed prisoners. Rifles guard prisoners, machine guns kill people. 90 seconds of murder, 15 hours. Baugnez Crossroads. The 120 American prisoners stand in a snow-covered field, hands raised or clasped behind their heads, waiting for German soldiers to march them to the rear. 2 MG-42 machine guns are positioned facing the prisoners. Then, without warning, without orders that the prisoners can hear, the machine guns open fire. The MG-42, called Hitler's Buzzsaw by Allied soldiers, fires at 200 rounds per minute. That's 20 rounds per second. Both guns firing together, 40 rounds per second. The sound is a continuous ripping roar, not individual shots, but a sustained scream of metal. Private Homer Ford is standing near the rear of the prisoner group when firing begins. He sees the Americans in front of him, men he's known for months, suddenly jerking, falling, collapsing. Blood sprays, men scream, others die silently. The machine gun fire sweeps across the prisoner group like a scythe cutting wheat. Ford's training and instinct take over. He drops to the ground immediately. As he falls, he feels something strike his arm, a bullet or perhaps a spent shell casing. He lies motionless in the snow, covered partially by the bodies of men who fell on top of him. The machine gun fire continues for approximately 90 seconds. Then it stops. In those 90 seconds, approximately 1,800 bullets were fired into 120 unarmed men standing in a 40-foot by 60-foot area. The result is catastrophic. Approximately 60 men are killed outright, killed by direct hits to vital organs or by multiple hits that cause rapid blood loss. Another 30 men are seriously wounded, gut shots, chest wounds, shattered limbs. The remaining 30, including Ford, are either lightly wounded or miraculously unhit, lying among the dead and wounded, pretending to be dead. For perhaps 30 seconds after the machine gun fire stops, there is relative silence. Then the screaming begins. Wounded men crying for medics, wounded men crying for their mothers, wounded men simply screaming in pain. Ford lies motionless, face down in snow that's now stained red with blood. He can hear German voices approaching. German soldiers walk among the fallen Americans. Some soldiers are laughing. Some are calling out, "Ist jemand am Leben? Is anyone alive?" When a wounded American moves or cries out, the Germans shoot him. Single pistol shots, executions at point-blank range. Private James Matera, wounded in both legs, lies bleeding 20 feet from Ford. Matera is conscious but unable to move. He watches a German soldier approach, pistol drawn. The soldier stands over Matera, looks down at him, and fires once. Execution style, shot to the head. Matera dies instantly. Ford hears the shot, and dozens more like it as German soldiers methodically execute the wounded. This continues for approximately 5 minutes. Then the German soldiers leave. They have orders to continue advancing, and they've already spent too much time on prisoners. The crossroads becomes quiet except for the moans of wounded men who survived the executions, either because they successfully pretended to be dead or because the Germans didn't check thoroughly. Ford lies motionless for another 10 minutes, waiting to ensure the Germans are gone. Then he carefully lifts his head and looks around. Bodies everywhere, blood staining the snow. Some men clearly dead, eyes open, not breathing. Others wounded and moving weakly. A few, like Ford, unhurt or lightly wounded, beginning to realize they might survive. Ford whispers, "Anyone alive?" Several voices respond, "Yes." "We need to get out of here," Ford says. "The Germans might come back." Private Warren Schmidt, wounded in the shoulder but able to move, agrees. "We need to reach American lines." The problem? American lines are somewhere south or west, but the Germans are everywhere, and the survivors have no weapons, no mops, no way to navigate except by hoping they travel in the right direction. The survivors begin moving, some crawling, others limping, a few able to walk. They move into a nearby forest, staying off roads, traveling cross-country through snow and freezing temperatures. Of the 120 Americans captured at Baugnez Crossroads, 84 were killed, either in the initial machine gun fire or in subsequent executions. 43 escaped, reaching American lines over the next 24 hours. The remaining 7 were recaptured by Germans and taken to POW camps. Private Homer Ford reached American lines on December 18th, after walking 12 miles through German-held territory. He was debriefed by military intelligence officers. His report, and reports from the other 42 survivors, documented the massacre, and those reports would have consequences. The survivor, December 18th, 1904, 0800 hours. American lines near Malmedy. Private Ford, exhausted, freezing, traumatized, is brought to a 1st Army intelligence officer for debriefing. The intelligence officer, Captain John Collins, has already heard rumors about a massacre, but Ford's account is the first detailed testimony. "They murdered us," Ford says, his voice shaking. "We were prisoners. We'd surrendered. We were unarmed, and they just murdered us." Collins takes detailed notes as Ford describes. The surrender, being herded into the field. The machine. Gunfire without warning. German soldiers executing the wounded. "How many Americans were killed?" Collins asks. "I don't know exactly. Maybe 80, maybe more. There were bodies everywhere." "Can you identify the German unit?" "They had SS insignia. Some of their vehicles had numbers. I saw 501 on one tank." Collins nods. 501st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, part of Kampfgruppe Piper. Over the next 24 hours, Collins interviews 42 more survivors. All tell the same story. Surrender, disarmament, herded into field, machine gun fire without warning, execution of wounded. The consistency of accounts leaves no doubt. This was a deliberate massacre, not a combat action. On December 19th, Collins's report reaches 1st Army headquarters. On December 20th, it reaches Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAEF. General Eisenhower reads the report and is furious. "This is a war crime," Eisenhower says. "Deliberate murder of prisoners. Find out who ordered it, document everything, and prepare for war crimes, prosecution after the war." But Eisenhower also faces an immediate problem. How does this massacre affect current operations? If word spreads among American troops that Germans are murdering prisoners, American soldiers might refuse to take German prisoners, creating a cycle of atrocities. Or American soldiers might become demoralized, fearing that surrender means death. Eisenhower decides on a calculated response. Inform American troops about the massacre, but frame it specifically as an SS atrocity, not representative of all German forces. On December 21st, messages are sent to all American units. Subject: treatment of prisoners. German SS troops have murdered American prisoners at Malmedy, Belgium. Approximately 80 unarmed POWs were machine-gunned after surrendering. This atrocity is attributable to Waffen-SS units, not regular German Army, Wehrmacht units. All American personnel are reminded: 1. Prisoners who surrender must be treated according to Geneva Convention. 2. Wounded prisoners must receive medical care. 3. Atrocities against our prisoners do not justify retaliating against innocent prisoners. However, Waffen-SS units have demonstrated they do not honor Geneva Convention protections. Exercise extreme caution when encountering SS units. The message's intent is clear. Continue taking Wehrmacht prisoners, but don't trust SS troops. The practical effect is different. American soldiers interpret the message as SS troops murder prisoners, so don't take SS prisoners. Throughout late December 1904 and January 1945, American units begin refusing to accept SS surrenders. When SS soldiers attempt to surrender, American soldiers sometimes shoot them, justifying it as self-defense based on Malmedy precedent. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. SS units know Americans won't accept their surrender, so SS units fight to the death, which reinforces American perception that SS troops are fanatical and untrustworthy. Private Ford, one of the massacre survivors, is transferred to rear area duty. He cannot return to combat. He's too traumatized, experiencing what we now call PTSD. He has nightmares about the massacre. He cannot hear sudden loud noises without panic attacks. He struggles with survivor's guilt. Why did he survive when 84 others died? "I keep seeing their faces," Ford told a chaplain in January 1945. "The men who died. I knew them. We served together for months, and I watched them die. I should have died too. Why didn't I?" The chaplain has no answer. Ford receives a medical discharge in March 1945, classified as combat fatigue, the 1940s term for PTSD. He returns to Indiana, struggles with alcoholism for years, and eventually finds stability through veterans support groups. He testifies at Malmedy war crimes trials in 1946. He dies in 1989 at age 65, surviving the war but never fully recovering from what he witnessed. Would you have been able to forgive, or would you have wanted revenge? Tell me in the comments. Justice at Dacha, May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders. The war in Europe ends, but justice for Malmedy victims is just beginning. American war crimes investigators immediately begin collecting evidence. Physical evidence. Bodies at WWII crossroads, exhumed and examined. Bullet trajectories analyzed. Shell casings collected. Photographs of massacre site. Witness testimony. 43 American survivors interviewed. Belgian civilians who witnessed massacre interviewed. German POWs who served in Kampfgruppe Piper interrogated. Documentary evidence. Kampfgruppe Piper unit records, radio intercepts, intelligence reports. By December 1945, investigators have identified 73 members of Kampfgruppe Piper allegedly involved in Malmedy massacre and other atrocities committed by the unit during December 1944. The accused include Joachim Piper, Kampfgruppe commander, numerous officers and NCOs, machine gunners who fired on prisoners, soldiers who executed wounded. The trial begins in May 1946 at Dachau, ironically held in the former concentration camp, now converted to a military tribunal. The prosecution's case is straightforward. Charge: violation of laws and customs of war through murder of prisoners of war. Evidence: survivor testimony describing surrender, disarmament, and murder. Medical evidence showing victims were shot at close range while unarmed. German defendants' own testimony, some admitted involvement. The defense's strategy is more complex. Defense argument number 1, orders from higher command. Piper's lawyers argue that he was following orders to advance rapidly without stopping for prisoners, and that his troops interpreted those orders as permission to eliminate prisoners. Prosecution response: orders to kill prisoners are illegal under Geneva Convention, and soldiers are obligated to refuse illegal orders. Defense argument number 2, combat confusion. Defense argues that some prisoners may have been killed accidentally during combat, not deliberately executed. Prosecution response: survivor testimony clearly describes prisoners being herded into a field, disarmed, and then fired upon without provocation, not combat. Defense argument number 3, coerced confessions. Defense claims American interrogators used physical abuse and threats to force confessions from German defendants. Prosecution response: while acknowledging some interrogation methods were aggressive, prosecution argues confessions were corroborated by physical evidence and survivor testimony. The trial lasts 6 months. On July 16, 1946, verdicts are announced. 43 defendants found guilty of war crimes, sentences. Joachim Piper, death by hanging. 42 other defendants, death by hanging, remaining. 30 defendants, prison terms ranging from 10 years to life. Piper and his co-defendants are transferred to Landsberg prison to await execution, but the sentences are controversial. Some American officers, including General George Patton, argue the sentences are too harsh. Piper and his men were soldiers following orders in the heat of battle, Patton says. They didn't run concentration camps. They didn't commit genocide. They killed prisoners in a war zone. That's wrong, but it's not the same as Holocaust crimes. Death sentences are excessive. Others argue the sentences are appropriate. Murder of unarmed prisoners isn't a combat action, prosecutors argue. It's murder. The Geneva Convention is clear. Prisoners must be protected. Piper's unit violated that protection systematically. The controversy intensifies when defense attorneys present evidence that some confessions were obtained through aggressive interrogation, including sleep deprivation, threats against defendants' families, mock executions. These revelations create public relations problems for the U.S. military. In 1948, General Lucius Clay, U.S. military governor of Germany, reviews the Malmedy sentences. He commutes most death sentences to life imprisonment. Piper's sentence is commuted to life in prison. In 1956, Joachim Piper is released from prison after serving 11 years. The release provokes outrage among Malmedy survivors and veterans organizations. He murdered 84 Americans in cold blood, veteran groups protest, and he serves 11 years? That's not justice. But Cold War politics influenced the decision. West Germany is now an American ally against the Soviet Union, and continuing to imprison German war criminals creates diplomatic tensions. Piper lives quietly in Germany until 1972, when he moves to France. On July 14, 1976, Bastille Day, unknown assailants firebomb Piper's house in Travail, France. Piper dies in the fire at age 61. French police investigate but never identify the attackers. Many suspect former French resistance members or concentration camp survivors. The investigation is quietly closed. The rule that changed. The Malmedy Massacre had lasting impacts on American military doctrine and the treatment of SS prisoners. Immediate impact. December 1904, May 1945. American soldiers became significantly less willing to accept SS surrenders. Documented incidents of American forces shooting SS prisoners increased dramatically after Malmedy. January 1945, near Channony, Belgium. American soldiers from 11th Armored Division allegedly executed 60 Waffen-SS prisoners in retaliation for Malmedy. January 1945, near Dachau, American soldiers from 45th Infantry Division executed approximately 30 SS guards after liberating Dachau concentration camp, though this incident had multiple causes beyond Malmedy. April 1945, numerous locations, reports of American soldiers refusing SS surrenders became common, with unofficial policy of no SS prisoners spreading through some units. This created operational problems. SS units, knowing Americans wouldn't accept surrender, fought more fanatically, causing higher American casualties. The cycle of violence escalated, with both sides committing atrocities. Long-term impact, post-war. The Malmedy Massacre influenced post-war Geneva Convention revisions, 1949. Geneva Convention revisions specifically addressed clearer definitions of prisoner protections, explicit prohibition of reprisals against prisoners, requirements for investigating alleged violations, individual criminal responsibility for violations. Modern military law reflects Malmedy lessons. U.S. military training emphasizes prisoners must be protected regardless of enemy actions. Orders to harm prisoners are illegal and must be refused. Individual soldiers are responsible for their actions even when following orders. The Piper defense, following illegal orders, is no longer valid. Modern military justice explicitly states that soldiers cannot use following orders as a defense for war crimes, based partly on Malmedy precedent. Cultural impact. Malmedy became synonymous with SS brutality in American cultural memory. Post-war films, books, and documentaries about which frequently reference Malmedy as evidence of SS war crimes. The massacre reinforced American perception of Waffen-SS as fundamentally different from regular German military, not honorable soldiers, but ideological fanatics capable of atrocities. This distinction affected post-war treatment of German veterans. Wehrmacht veterans could receive pensions and recognition. Waffen-SS veterans were denied pensions and official recognition. SS membership was, and remains, disqualifying for immigration to the United States. Historical debate. Historians continue debating Malmedy's significance. Some argue it was exceptional. Malmedy was an outlier. Most German forces treated prisoners properly. Piper's unit was unusually brutal even by SS standards. Others argue it was representative. Malmedy wasn't unique. SS units committed similar atrocities throughout the war. Malmedy just happened to have American survivors who documented it. The truth is probably between these extremes. Not all SS units committed atrocities, some fought conventionally, but SS units committed atrocities at significantly higher rates than Wehrmacht units. Malmedy was one of many SS war crimes, distinguished only by having survived witnesses the victims remember. Today, the Baunez Crossroads, where 84 Americans died, is marked by a memorial, the Malmedy Massacre. Memorial features stone monument listing names of all 84 victims, American and Belgian flags, interpretive panels explaining what happened, annual commemoration ceremonies every December 17th. The victims ranged in age from 18 to 45. They came from states across America: New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, California, Texas. They were reconnaissance soldiers, specialists in artillery observation, not frontline infantry. They had surrendered properly, following military regulations. They were disarmed, posed no threat. And they were murdered anyway. Some victims' families never learned exactly how their sons, husbands died, just that they were killed in action on December 17, 1904. The full story of the massacre wasn't widely publicized until after the war, partly to avoid damaging morale. In 1981, survivors organized the Malmedy Survivors Association to preserve memory of the massacre and ensure victims are remembered. The association holds reunions, maintains contact with victims' families, and provides testimony for historical research. The last surviving witness, Private Virgil Larry, died in 2013 at age 96. With his death, no living Americans remain who witnessed the massacre, but the memory survives through testimony, documentation, and the memorial at Baunez. December 17, 1904, 84 men murdered in 90 seconds. Not killed in battle, where death has meaning, but executed after surrendering, where death is just murder. The Malmedy Massacre reminds us that war crimes aren't abstract legal concepts. They are 84 individual tragedies, 84 families destroyed, 84 futures erased, because one commander decided Geneva Convention protections didn't matter, and because his soldiers followed orders they should have refused. The survivors, men like Homer Ford, lived with nightmares and guilt for decades. The perpetrators, men like Joachim Peiper, served light sentences and lived to old age. That's not justice. That's just what happened. These stories of atrocity, survival, and the cost of following evil orders deserve to be remembered. Subscribe so they never fade into history. Next time, the photograph that became a symbol, and the battle for 8 square miles that cost 26,000 American casualties.